Abracadabra.
Welcome to the Abracadamn Podcast, and I'm your host, stand-up comedy magician Danny Whitson. I hope everyone had a fantastic Christmas. I know we did. At first, it didn't look like it was going to happen because we had a white Christmas here in the Knoxville area, which doesn't happen that very often, which was super cool. Super cool, but on the flip side, a lot of people got stranded on the side of the road because they weren't expecting that much snow. We almost missed out on seeing my son, but luckily he was able to get down and we were able to have a nice little family Christmas. But yeah, white Christmas. That's definitely cool. Maybe it's a good omen. Let's hope. I think it's a good omen. Definitely ate too much for Christmas. I'll be honest with you. I haven't ate that much since probably the day before Christmas. And then the day before that and the day before that. I enjoyed myself some whiskey and eggnog, and that tore my stomach up. I think it's definitely the eggnog, not the whiskey. Maybe next time I should add more whiskey. I definitely, we all got a little bit of the Christmas hangover. You know, that's whenever you look around the house and there's all this stuff that, you know, you're probably never going to use. But I tell you, look at all the gifts that you got and go ahead right now. And I want you to be grateful. And I want you to thank China for making all that crap. All right? Because Christmas wouldn't be Christmas without China. Which leads us into this topic for this episode. It actually has nothing to do with China. I'm just saying that it has nothing, maybe a little bit. Who knows? I don't know. But our guest for this episode is Dr. Cliff James of Kids Central Pediatrics. And I've known Cliff for, a long time now. He was my son's pediatrician. He is currently my daughter's pediatrician. He's a fantastic doctor and also just a really fun guy. And also there's another secret about Cliff. He's also a magician. But please don't hold that against him. We talk about why COVID-19 is different in kids and versus adults. And, he talks about a little bit of history of vaccines and kind of how vaccines work. And it's just an interesting conversation. So sit back and enjoy this episode with Dr. Cliff James of Kids Central Pediatrics. Okay, we are here today with Dr. Cliff James of Kids Central Pediatrics. How you doing, doctor?
I'm doing great.
Well, I tell you what, first of all, thank you for coming on to the podcast. And if you don't mind, could you tell the listeners, let them know who you are?
Well, my name is Cliff James. I own Kids Central Pediatrics in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I'm the author of 2 books, A First-Time Parent's Manual, and then my latest book that just came out last month is The Big Book of Why for Parents. I have been in the Oak Ridge area for the last 20 plus years and have owned Kids Central Pediatrics for 18 and a half.
Well, it definitely sounds like you're qualified to know what you're talking about.
Only in pediatrics.
Gotcha. Absolutely. Well, I tell you what, this is, I find this interesting is because, we're living in an interesting time and during the middle of a pandemic. And did you in a million years, while you were in med school the whole time, did you ever think that you would be dealing with a pandemic right here in your country?
Yeah. We've had a couple of different things that have shown up, since I've been in medicine. We had the hantavirus that came from mice. And so when I was in medical school, that was a huge thing that was coming out of Colorado and New Mexico, out of these cabins and stuff. So, that was very early on in my career. And then, when I was starting, HIV was, and so, yeah, I grew up with, the pandemic of HIV and everybody being scared that that's what was going to get us. So yeah, I mean, it's not unusual that you have these things show up, and you have a long enough career, you're going to see 2 or 3 of them.
So do you think what makes this different compared to I mean, well, we all know HIV was it was sort of, out there. I mean, a lot of people, there were a lot of fear around HIV, especially in the 80s when it came out and in the 90s. But we have seen a pandemic like this before, is kind of what you're saying, correct?
Well, not exactly like this. Most of the, like when HIV came out and you got AIDS, when it first came out, it was universally fatal. You were going to die. And it killed people relatively fast. And the same thing when SARS came out, it was violent, but it was brief because the people that got it died so quickly. I think the thing that's different about this is just the huge range of what people present with symptoms. That you can have people who don't have anything at all, and people who have just a very mild cold, and people who are sicker and feel bad, and then people that are in an intensive care unit and dying. And a lot of times, no real rhyme or reason why that's happening to different people.
Now, like I said, you work in pediatrics. So why is it that children don't seem to get as sick with COVID-19?
Well, the current thought is that with COVID-19, the symptoms that you see that are so bad that are leading to death are an overreaction to your immune system. And so it's a huge inflammatory storm that causes like the pneumonias and the vasculitises that cause heart problems and problems with your vascular system. And so the thought is that children, being young and I guess immunologically naive, they don't respond as strong to those things. And so they're not having the overreaction. Now, the interesting thing is it's the first time in my career that we've had an illness that affects children less than it does and that this is almost not much at all for kids. I mean, in our, Tennessee is now the second highest state with the incidence of COVID. I mean, we're getting hit extremely hard. We are seeing patients in our office every day. We're testing probably 20 to 30 a day and having anywhere from 3 to 6 positives per day. But yet with that, I haven't seen a single kid that I would have thought was as sick as our normal flu kids each year. Now, that is not true for the adult population, and it's definitely not true of the geriatric population. But in everything else that we see, like strep and RSV and croup and flu, it's the kids that get the hardest hit usually. So it's a little different than what we normally see.
Okay, now, with COVID, they've put, schools are now on virtual learning. Do you feel like that's helped any?
No. Most of us think that it's done more harm than good. I don't think it's really spread of COVID just because kids are not the primary vectors. A vector is something that moves things around. And they're not really the ones that are spreading this. Most of the kids that are getting it are actually usually getting it home from a family member bringing it into the house. And so I don't think it's really helped as much as what they thought. Now, I think they're scared of more the kids spreading. We know that there's a lot of people involved in the school. You got your custodians, your teachers, your administration, your cafeteria work. And we know that a third to a half working in the school are over 50, so are at that high risk population. And of course, that doesn't account for the people that might have heart disease, lung disease, but also what we're seeing is the kids are not doing as well learning virtually or in a classroom. And probably the thing that's the most devastating to pediatricians is that the mental health. So it's just devastating as far as that. We actually think that we will probably have a lot more deaths from suicide due to COVID and virtual learning than we will even come close to with deaths in the pediatric population due to COVID.
That is terrifying thought, and I could definitely see why. Now, we've seen so much doom and gloom this past year. It's almost like I don't even want to watch the news anymore. I'm just tired of hearing it. But we have had a little glimmer of hope here recently with Pfizer and the vaccine that's now being issued out. Now, this is going to people in the healthcare and I believe our elderly first, correct? And the people of high risk. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of stupid things being posted on social media about people afraid to take the vaccine. Me personally, I'll be honest with you, I'll be in the front of the line to take the vaccine because worst case scenario, say I turn into a zombie, at least I get to go outside and do stuff. I get to go to concerts as a zombie, you know. So if you don't mind.
So the interesting that.
Go ahead.
The interesting thing about that is that is not the worst case scenario. You know, vaccines had a tumultuous when their development. And so your conspiracies, they actually have some history to back them up. Unfortunately, you know, like during the development of the Salk and Sabin vaccines for polio, there were a lot of people that got sacrificed to the vaccine trying to develop it. So, you know, there's kind of a checkered history. And, you know, we do have vaccines that have caused some terrible things in the past. I mean, smallpox was notorious, people in the hospital and killed people. The old vaccine DTP for pertussis before we went to the AP, you know, the pertussis vaccine, actually, they did away with it in Great Britain for a while because they had such severe side effects. It wasn't unusual for kids to have fevers 104, 105 and see mental retardations, and there were even deaths from. So vaccines have been pretty risk-free over the last 20, 25 years. But you go back into history and you can find some ugly stuff with vaccines. And so I think the thing the most concerned right now is a couple things. One, we have never tried to develop a vaccine this fast. We don't have a vaccine available right now that has as many vaccine reactions as this one does. I mean, what vaccine do you remember that you get where it is not unusual that you will have to miss 1 to 2 days of work because you feel so bad? The other thing that's a component of this is a vaccine that's unlike we've ever developed. What we've always developed before was pieces of a virus or a bacteria that we put in our body, and we'd fake our body into thinking that it was being attacked. So it would develop an antibody against that specific thing. Then when we were actually attacked with the real thing, we all had those antibodies in the body to fight it off, and we didn't get so sick. This is not that kind of vaccine. This is an mRNA vaccine, and we have had exactly 0 of these before. This is brand new. We never had anything like this. So nobody has anything to base this off of. And so, you know, new is always scary. And there have been observations in the scientific community about whether this technology was ready for the prime time to actually start this. And so this first one's going to be, you know, definitely a learning curve. And, you know, it's not as effective as the other one. The other one coming through has actually got a better track record as far as effectiveness. This one's only 75% effective. So that means that, you know, if you get it, you still have a 25% chance of these just somebody else does. You have to get 2 of them. They have to be within 28 days. The storage of this is pretty dramatic. I think you have to ship minus 95 degrees. And then it can only be thawed out for 5 days before it's not good anymore. So, you know, I think this first vaccine is going to have and we're going to see it, but I think it probably won't last long just because there's too many problems with it. The next one coming through goes up to, I think, 94%. And it's shipped at room temp and stored in a refrigerator. And so I think it will probably be the next variation, and it will probably be a little bit better.
Well, at least that's some good news then mixed in there. And you know, not not wanting to freak out over, taking the vaccine. I still tend to, even though, of course, there's that there is a horrible bumpy past. And I know there are, some people would have every right not to trust, the government shipping out vaccines, to be guinea pigs. Well,
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think I think the government's just trying to find a way to protect people. Throughout history, there's always been some colorful personalities who've tried to get away with some stuff. I don't think there's any deep, dark, secrets that people are trying to suppress right now. Because, with social media and the way that the world is right now, everything that will come out really, really fast. It's too hard to bear it. On the other side, do I worry that there are some corners? Yeah, I think they're cutting some corners. Luckily, in my population, it's not going to really matter. When this one got the emergency approval, the pediatricians actually protested and did approve less than 18 years old. Now, evidently, they kind of put their thumb down and approved down to 16 years of age. But it doesn't look like they'll even start testing in younger kids probably until mid to late 2021. And we're not talking about a vaccine until probably at least 2022.
Okay, and that's for children, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And, it's one of those things that, do you really need them to have it? That's the next question. Since they're not the super spreader and they're not getting super sick, do we let them get it and develop natural immunity to it when they're young and then immunize people that are then at the higher risk so they don't get it? And that's something that's going to have to be figured out with time. Medicine doesn't work the way that people think it is. Medicine is not time science. It's more like history. We do better when we look at things and they happen and we look back and say, okay, how was that 10 years ago? This trying to develop things in real time is a little hard.
Well, let's ask this, okay? Now, I think you did kind of clear up how a vaccine works, correct? Like, aren't most of them dead viruses?
So it just depends. We have viruses and we have bacteria. And so we have a couple of live viruses that are what are called attenuated, where we weaken them so that they can't really cause the real disease. So like chickenpox, measles, mumps, and rubella, and the rotavirus vaccine are all live vaccines. We have some that are for, bacteria, and then some that are with viruses.
Okay.
So like the hepatitis A is a virus, but the strep pneumonia vaccine, that's a bacteria, so is Haemophilus. And you take pieces and parts of those or weaken them so that they can't cause real disease. And, that's your goal is to provide something that looks like it so you can practice it. So it's kind of like the practice team for a sporting event. So you send out your scouts and you go, okay, what does their offense look like? And then you put your scrubs in the position so that you can look at it so that you know what it looks like when you really face them. Then on game day, you're like, okay, I got this. I know exactly where these people are going to be. That's kind of the same idea with a vaccine. I've seen this. I know how to fight it. I'm going to win.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, for the dummies out here, we can totally understand that. That makes sense to me. Now, I haven't brought this up yet, but something else real special about you is you're not just a pediatrician. You happen to also be a magician. Yes. Now,
this is true. Yes. I actually got accused of getting through medical school that way.
We always ask at least one very tough, difficult question. Which was more difficult for you? Medical school or convincing your loved ones to watch you do card tricks?
Well, as long as you were just doing the card trick one time, it was definitely medical school. But when you got to that 15th time of showing them the perfect pass, it was definitely hard to convince them to watch.
And now one more thing before we get out of here. I'm holding up a card. I want you to use the powers. What card is it?
Jack of Diamonds.
The Jack of Diamonds. Now keep in mind, Doc, we are in what? How did you do that? That was amazing. They can't see it. That was amazing. Nailed it. Dr. James is amazing.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing. Well, I tell you what, I think you answered a lot, some questions, absolutely, that a lot of us are wondering. Now, have they, has the vaccine made it through this area? Are you guys, is it showing up to you guys yet?
So this vaccine, just because of the way that it's going to have to be shipped, it's only going to be at very select locations like hospitals and probably in the health departments. And so it won't be available very easily in just little clinics just because of the difficulty in storing it. Also, we don't have a large supply of these. And so in order for them to be able to give it to the people that are the highest risk, they're going to have some control over that. So it's not just going to be at one of those places where you can get them at Walgreens and stuff. Now, it will be eventually. With the other ones that are easier to store, and as they get where they can make more and more of it, it will become more widely available. But right now, you're going to see this at really the larger hospitals, and they'll start there, and then they'll start doling it out to the next round of high-risk people.
Now, real quick, I guess this is just a guess. Of course, it's got to be just a guess. But when do you think we'll start seeing things somewhat back to normal, if at least in this area?
I mean, I have no idea. I mean, they're expecting that we'll probably peak as far as how much we're seeing of it probably in mid to late January. And, just as more and more people have it, then there's fewer people that can get it. So it can kind of burn itself out. I think there's, a significant fear that's going to go on for at least the next year and a half. My hope is that we get back to some semblance of normal within the next year and a half to 2 years. There's just so much new information that comes out all the time. And then people and this is one of the things that's the food for the conspiracy theorists is they like to say that we keep changing our mind or they keep changing the story. And the problem is that we don't know the story yet. Medicine is like history, and it has to go on for a significant period of time for us to have enough knowledge and enough studies to say how to do stuff. So especially in the very beginning, they were just making their best guess. And then science then tells us, was that right or was that wrong? And then take that and then you improve on it or you do something different until you find the answer. And you're always trying to improve on things. People don't realize that since I've done pediatrics for the last 20 years, there's been things that have changed 4 times. And we did things completely different. I mean, perfect example is circumcisions in little boys. When I first started, we did it on everyone. Then it was like, okay, we're kind of ambivalent. Then it was, don't do it. Now all of a sudden it's back to do it on everybody because it can help with, sexually transmitted disease and decreased penile cancer and all this stuff. I mean, it's made a complete circle with 4 different over 20 years. Well, just like we're doing this vaccine so much faster, there's so much studies and so much science going on. The stories change even faster. And so it's not that they're, contradicting themselves. It's that they have new information. They gave you the best information they had at that point, and as new information's out, then you're going to get new information. The other thing is people will take like what I say. So, I do lots of videos that educate parents on COVID and I'll do it on my Facebook page, and I try and tell them things. But COVID's very different in pediatrics than it is in old people. So me talking to my population and my target audience, you can't take that and then as a 65-year-old go, Dr. James said this is nothing, go about your life. No, Dr. James did not do that because Dr. James doesn't know anything about a 65-year-old person. Dr. James knows about kids. And so my population is going to have a very different story than some other patient's going to have. And we're all doctors, we're seeing different things. The people in a hospital are seeing the more severe cases. People that see primarily old people are having lots of death and sadness. People that are taking compromised people or people with a cancer. And so there's lots of different people that are experiencing the disease in very different ways that if you talk to them are going to have a very different perspective.
Well, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Now let's go back to this because I think this is really important. Where can parents, you said that you make these videos for your Facebook page, correct? So they could just follow you on Facebook to watch these videos.
Sure. We do updates, as new things come out. So not this last weekend, but the week CDC completely changed the rules on quarantining and how long you had to quarantine. As new information, we do little COVID updates on our Kids Central Pediatrics Facebook page. And, we have people all over that, watch them and stuff. We've had some of them that have had like 150,000 views. And so, but it's definitely from a pediatric view. I'm not trying to, I'm not an expert in cancer or an expert in, family practice or internal medicine. I'm an expert in pediatrics. So when I'm really tailoring my information to parents who are worried about their kids and the information that pertains to them. So as new things come up, I'm trying to inform them about what's changing. You asked me in the very beginning, had I ever expected that this would happen? There's been a couple things that have been different. I've definitely had to learn more faster.
You are also an author of 2 books. Where can the listeners pick up those books if they want to check them out?
My first book was self-published, and so I think you can still find it on Amazon. My second book that just came out, it came out from a major publisher out of New York, and so it's available pretty much anywhere. You can find it on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. You can find it on Target.com and Walmart.com. And so if you just search, the Big Book of Why for Parents, you're going to find 50 different places you can buy that thing.
Okay, awesome.
And it's really cool. It's probably, I'm pretty proud of it. It's mainly tailored for kids, they're less than 2. And it's the most common questions that parents have that start with why.
Okay, makes sense. And there's a lot of those. So
there are.
Well, I tell you what, it feels better just learning a little more about, how vaccines work and what they do. I'm still creeped out when I hear somebody cough. And now also I'm a little worried about, I didn't know penile cancer existed. So I'm not going to sleep too well tonight now. But
that's the other thing is just the vast number of symptoms. Like in pediatrics, our major symptoms of COVID are sore throat, headache, a little bit of fever, and then loss of taste and smell. And I guess, the other thing is, another thing with, have you ever experienced a pandemic? This is the first one in my career that I actually got. So I actually got COVID.
Wow. Did not know
so
that.
I got to experience some of those symptoms firsthand. So, I had the fever and the chill. I had a little confusion. I had cough, sore throat, fatigue. I lost my sense of taste and smell for about 2 weeks. I lost, 14 pounds. So, I did get to experience what it's like and, as an adult. Now, on the other side, my wife got it from me, and then our youngest child got it. And our youngest child, it hardly slowed him down at all. He just kept on trucking.
Well, now, is your sense of smell back? Do you have everything back now?
Yeah, I lost mine for about 2 weeks. Now, my wife, she lost her sense of taste and smell for about 6 weeks. And she was one of those that they call a long hauler, where she had the symptoms that lasted a lot longer. She had daily headaches for about 6 weeks and really, really tired for about 6 weeks.
Yeah, I've heard that actually it can go up to months.
Oh,
before
yeah.
they-
Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Dr. James, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking with us. And like I said, if they could catch your book on Amazon, you said?
Sure. Yeah.
Sounds great. Awesome. Thank you for coming on.
You bet. You have a great day.
All right, that wraps up this episode of the Abracadamn Podcast with our guest, Dr. Cliff James of Kids Central Pediatrics. If you're interested, definitely, if you have children, I would definitely highly recommend picking up his books. Also, I hope this was helpful, and I hope this answered some of your questions that you may have been wondering about vaccines. I do want to apologize. There was some moments in this interview that were a little choppy. Our connection wasn't that great, but if you did stick through the whole thing, I really appreciate it. Thank you. I think that problem is solved for any future episodes. Speaking of future episodes, I'm having to do 2 episodes a week right now to play and catch up. So this Friday, our next episode will be out, and we're going to have the very talented, mystical Vanessa Claire. She's a tarot card reader, and she's entertaining at that. And she actually gives me a reading on the next episode. So you definitely want to check in and hear that, because I think she nailed it. If you guys are on Instagram, definitely please give me a follow at Super Magic Boy. Also, be sure to like the Abracadamn podcast like page on Facebook. We're also on YouTube, and check us out on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or any platform you like to listen to podcasts. Thanks a lot for listening, and I'll see y'all next time.
Abracadabra.